My name is Rahul Daswani. I am the head of people and culture at Open Government Products. We are an experimental unit at GovTech, the government technology agency of Singapore. At Open Government Products, what we're trying to do is reimagine what government can look like if we worked like a modern tech company, but on public sector problems. So that means everything from reimagining how we do technology, how we use the cloud, how we use SaaS solutions, how we do people management and performance management. So really freedom to imagine what the way in which we can get the best out of our people. Yeah, so for managers, what's really helpful is you get a much nicer overview and a lot more data about where the individual is performing, right? Because you can see all the different peer reviews, you can see a quantitative score and you can see the qualitative score. And the quantitative score, I've actually also weighted it, and that's one of the unique things about our model is it frees people up to share what they want to share without too much fear of, oh, what if I don't have such an accurate picture of this person because I haven't worked with them that much? Is that going to be a problem? Because in some instances, it could prevent people from providing some of that feedback. The way we've mitigated that is to say, well, if you haven't worked with somebody that well, we still want your feedback. We won't weight it very much. So the weightage can be up to 8 times less than somebody who's worked very closely with person A. So then it's like, okay, I'm free to give my feedback because it's not really going to affect quantitatively their rating, but I actually can give somebody some insight. I can give the manager that insight of how somebody is perceived by people who are working not super closely with them. And that's useful because you can imagine scenarios where you have somebody who, when people work really closely with them, they say, hey, this person is really, really great. But because they're quiet, they interact only predominantly with their team, their learnings don't get circulated outside. People don't have a sense of what they're working on. And as a result, people outside their team think they're weaker than the people who work more closely with them. You also see the opposite, right? Where people who work closely with somebody realize actually they're not that great, but maybe they speak really well. And so people who don't work with them think they're great. And so the manager is actually then able to see the data that shows, oh, actually what's the difference in how this person is perceived by different groups, by people who work closely and not, by people of the same job type. So how do engineers see this engineer versus product managers and designer? And you can break down the data to be able to see what are some of the differences. And that's really useful for the manager to then say, okay, which groups of people should you work with more or get better at communicating with? Right? So that's really nice. And then for executives, what's really helpful is you have a dashboard. So you can have an overall picture. If I want to make a call on who should provide more feedback because this person's up for promotion, so I want to make sure they have comprehensive feedback from both breadth in terms of different job types of people, but also depth of their same job type, somebody who's senior, somebody who's at the same level, somebody more junior. If you have a really nice dashboard, actually it allows you to then quite quickly see who are the people, who should rate who. I can make sure somebody is not overloaded with reviews because I can see quite quickly how many reviews does each person have on the dashboard itself. And I can see the progress quite quickly. So I know who to as head of people and culture, I can go and say, hey, you're quite behind on your reviews. Can you go and buck up and please meet the deadlines and the timelines? So it's really useful for executives to be able to have a big picture view of what's happening and then to be able to intervene much more efficiently and much more quickly and much earlier than you would without a big picture. So that's how it's helpful for managers and for executives. Yeah, so for this, I actually went with the more established brand names like Performia to see what they had and what's kind of best practice, right? And I spoke with quite a few of them. And in the end, what I realized is they had quite a clear idea of where their product was headed. For them, affinity-based or confidence-based, as we call it, OGP, performance management was not a feature that they were particularly interested in pursuing because a lot of their existing users were quite happy without it. And so therefore for them, it became a niche feature. It wasn't a priority for them on their roadmap, if at all. Because they had developed the product already quite mature, they were reluctant to then make this particular feature a priority. So then I began to say, okay, well, if it's not the more established one, because they don't necessarily want to build in the way that makes sense for me. Even though they acknowledge that, hey, this is actually a really good model, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's just that nobody is asking for it because it's quite innovative. So then I said, okay, let me look for other potential providers who are probably maybe not so mature in the development, because then there's more space and more scope for me to influence some of how they build it and create some optionality to do affinity-based. It was just nice in terms of the timing, because where Profit was at that stage was starting to think about building up the performance module more thoroughly and thinking about how to do it in a way that is really can provide some of the best options for organizations to use it. And the timing was great, because when I spoke with Karthik from Profit, he sat down with me and really understood not just how a process works and how it could be operationalized, but really some of the fundamental principles by which we operated. Because then a lot of the design for the performance management software then becomes clearer, right? What is the sequence in which things happen? Who gets to approve certain things? Where do you draw the line of when things get, you want to block certain things before they get released to everybody, right? You want to make sure there's calibration, for example, and every manager's view of their reports and their ratings are all fair. So you want to stall that before it gets released to the general public. So because he was able to understand a lot of how we operate, plus combined with that knowledge of all the other organizations that Profit works with, then you can create a product that is actually incredibly customizable. So you can use affinity-based, or you don't have to. And even in affinity-based, you can figure out what kind of confidence scores you want. So I use an exponential scale where the 4 confidence levels are weighted 1, 2, 4, and 8. And so that kind of flexibility to be able to decide how many levels there are and what the scale is and what the colors are for the charts and what the ratings are that you want to assess people on, whether it's the meet expectations exceed scale, or for us, are you performing at associate level, core level, senior level? All that flexibility makes for a really good product, because then you can really go crazy and think about what really makes sense for your organization, and then use the tool in a way that's most beneficial for you and your organization.